Hello and welcome back to another episode of 40k Model Evolution. This week I wanted to look at Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines are one of the oldest, one of the most classic factions in Warhammer 40k, so I thought that they might have some really interesting models to look at today. Obviously, I don't have the chance to look at every single model, so I chose to look at a few of the most iconic models that have been around from the beginning of the faction. So let's start with this Chaos Lord. This is a Chaos Lord that just came out in 10th edition. It's pretty new. I think it looks pretty good. It's a little on the basic side for the Chaos. It's not doing anything crazy, but it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. This is the Chaos Lord with Jump Pack that also came out in 10th edition pretty recently. I think I like this guy a little bit more. I'm a real sucker for the aerial poses, and that's done really well here. This is another Chaos Lord with Jump Pack. This guy looks pretty awesome. He doesn't even look like he's fully alive. The face is pretty bad on that, but I think the pose is pretty cool, as well as the jetpack that he has. This is a Chaos Lord in Terminator armor from 4th edition. I really like this model. The horns on this are super well done, and I always love when models have the skulls of other factions on top like that. I think that looks super cool. This is another Chaos Lord in Terminator armor. I quite like this one, but I think the other one's just done a little bit better. This one's a little on the basic side. I mean, all he's got is the skulls, really. And this is a 3rd edition Chaos Lord. I think this guy looks really great. He's got the classic old style kind of chunky hands and tiny head. And then this is another one from 3rd edition. I think this version just has some other weapon options and a helmet instead. I think I would have gone with the helmet option personally if I was making this model, because those horns just look super cool. Next, I want to look at the Warpsmith. This Warpsmith came out in 9th edition. I really like this model. It gives huge Adeptus Mechanicus vibes to me. I guess more like Dark Mechanicus in this instance. I'm a real sucker for that giant axe and those super cool tentacles. I really like this model. This is a 6th edition Warpsmith. I quite like this model as well. This one's definitely giving more Iron Warriors kind of feeling to it with the dark metallic and the gold. It still has those talons, which I really like, and it also has the axe. I would say it's just a little bit clunky, and looking in the middle of it, it's kind of hard to figure out what's really going on. Other than that, I think it's pretty well done. And this is the 3rd edition Warsmith. I'm not sure if that's a typo or if they just changed the name, but this is the Warsmith and not the Warpsmith. This guy is classic Iron Warriors with the hazmat, dark metal, and the covered in skull paintings also. This is probably my favorite version of all the Warpsmiths, honestly. He just looks so dirty and grungy. Next, I want to look at probably the face of current Chaos Space Marines, and that would be Abaddon, the Spoiler. This version came out in 8th edition and is pretty much an instant classic, I would say. As far as Chaos Space Marine characters go, I'd say he might be the best model they have. He's one of those models that's almost more of a display piece than he really is a miniature game model. This version of Abaddon was actually for the Horus Heresy, which explains why his armor looks so different, as well as why it's a little bit outdated. This model of Abaddon is also from Horus Heresy from 2002. This one looks surprisingly similar to how the 8th edition 40k model looks. And this is Abaddon's 2nd edition miniature. Again, the posing is really similar. It's just the scale that you can see has changed over the eras. But I like how similar the shape is between the new model and this old one. Fabius Bile is another favorite of mine from the Chaos Space Marines. I think this model is great with all of his syringes coming off of his backpacks and his vials filled with mysterious liquid, as well as the leather kind of jacket that he always wears. This version of Fabius Bile came out in 1996. Again, it's a really similar pose to the new version. He has the syringes and different kinds of saws, and the jacket is almost identical. In fact, this one even has a little face in the bottom right corner there. Noise Marines are probably one of the funniest models in the entire game of 40k. You can field some of the goriest and most disgusting demons, and then you can also have guys with leopard print. That being said, I think their models are really cool. A guitar that's also a bolt gun. I mean, I can't complain at all. This is a 3rd edition Noise Marine, and I gotta say, the lack of leopard print is really lacking. I also think his gun isn't getting the point across as well as the new model does of just literally being a guitar. This is a 2nd edition Noise Marine, and this guy kinda gets it. Much more of an instrument type of weapon that he has there. And I believe those are speakers above his head. I also really like those green skulls he has near the bottom of the weapon and on his knee. And this is a 1st edition Noise Marine. This is what you can tell inspired the newest paint scheme for the Noise Marine. I think this model is fantastic. I honestly didn't realize how much of a copy the newest model is based off this old one. I mean, it's almost identical. Next, I want to look at the Chaos Dreadnoughts.
This is technically called the Hell Brute, but it very much fills the purpose of the Dreadnoughts for the Chaos Space Marines. I've always liked this model, all the demonic flesh going in between the gears. I think it really gets the point across that this is a possessed Dreadnought, as well as those cool metallic tentacles he's got sneaking out. Here's a Chaos Space Marine Dreadnought from 2nd edition. This definitely has the old boxy look that the Dreadnoughts used to have, but I honestly really like the helmet on this model, as well as the giant mace he has swinging over there. And this is the 1st edition Chaos Space Marines Dreadnought. I really like this model. It's much more alien than anything that the Chaos Space Marines have going on currently. It honestly looks more like a Tyranid model than it does a CSM model. That being said, it doesn't really carry over that it's a Dreadnought, and I can't really see a possessed Space Marine actually being in there. Next up, let's look at Chaos Space Marine Terminators. These are some really classic models for me, at least. I've definitely played against these guys a lot. I've always liked the horned masks they have, as well as the weapons. I think it's really cool that the weapons are so much larger than the Space Marine weapons. These Chaos Terminators are from 4th edition. The shape is very similar. I would say the mask is just a little clunkier looking, as well as the weapons. They don't look bad per se, they just have that older kind of boxy look. This is a 2nd edition Terminator. I think it's really cool how similar the shape is through all of these models. And here is a 1st edition Chaos Terminator. Honestly, I don't think I knew that Terminators were this old of a model. This guy seems to be some kind of Nurgle Terminator, but I really like the skull mask that he has. I don't think I've seen that on any other Terminators before. Demon Princes are really cool for the Chaos Space Marines. They're basically just demons given Chaos Space Marine armor with Chaos Space Marine weapons. This one from 9th edition is pretty interesting. I really like his spiky tail, and his sword is painted really well. This Demon Prince I see used pretty often in games still, and this one is from 5th edition. I've always really liked the scar on his chest, especially when it's painted like that, like it's burning up alive from inside of him. This one's cool. This is a Nurgle type of Demon Prince from 4th edition. I feel like that face is super iconic. I'm sure I've seen that in so many different pieces. But I also really like his sword here. This is a 3rd edition Demon Prince. I've seen this model before and I really do not like it. The way that his skin is carrying over his backpack really grosses me out, and as well as his hand over there on the right. Oh, it's just too gross. It's just kind of hard to tell where his flesh ends and the armor begins. This is a 2nd edition Demon Prince. I don't think I've ever seen this model before, and wow, it is kind of mind-blowing. I think that's supposed to be armor, but it looks like he has a hairy chest, and his claw hand is really something interesting. It looks like he has teeth, or he has to floss those or something. This is another 2nd edition Demon Prince. This one is bizarre. He looks like the genie from Aladdin. I don't know, he looks like a shriveled up raisin or something. I haven't seen this before. This is really weird looking. This is one of the first times that I would say each model improved with age, because these old models are pretty weird looking. Next up are Possessed. I've always liked these guys that came out in 9th edition. They're kind of like lesser demons that have been given the Chaos Space Marine armor. Or I guess they're supposed to be possessed Chaos Space Marine. Either way, they're all really unique and interesting. My favorite has to be those spider legs coming off of the guy in the bottom right. Here's some Possessed from 2007. These guys are cool. I like how they have wings. Only some of them have wings. I like how only some of these guys have wings. And they all have really goofy looking faces. These Possessed are from 2006, and I guess it just gets goofier. These guys look like they're just about to hop into a mosh pit or something, especially the guy on the top right up there. I've always thought the Obliterator is a really cool model. It's kind of one step below a Dreadnought, I would say. It's almost more humanoid than it is robotic, and I think that's really interesting. The shoulder-mounted guns, I think, are great, as well as those giant fists. And I also really like how his head is covered in teeth up there in the middle. This is a 3rd edition Obliterator, and wow, this guy looks like he is suffering. The other Obliterator looks like he's in control, and this guy looks like the robot is entirely taking over, the demon is entirely taking over him, and the pilot inside of that suit has lost control of everything. That being said, I do think it looks really chaos. It looks pretty cool. It looks more like Nightmare on Elm Street than it does Warhammer 40k, but it looks pretty cool. This is a 2nd edition Obliterator. Excuse me for the very blurry image. At least I can offer some variety. These guys are cool. You can kind of see that they're beginning to take their possession in a way, but they're still giant walking suits of armor and destruction. Definitely can see where the influence of the Obliterators began. I think Havocs are cool. These guys came out in 8th edition. Something about heavy weapons always gets me. Particularly, I've always liked the grenade launcher guy down on the right side, but perhaps they could use a little more demonic possession. These Havocs came out in 3rd edition. I gotta say, I like the design ideas behind these weapons a little bit more. The scary little mouse at the end of all the barrels I think is really interesting. That being said, the armor itself is super boring here. Barely anything holding back these guys from just being painted as regular Space Marines. And these are some Havocs from 2nd edition with a variety of different guns. This one is the autocannon. This one here is the rocket launcher. The heavy bolter's always been a favorite of mine. I think this little guy looks awesome. And the las cannon looks pretty great here. These are all pretty interesting looking, but it's a little difficult to tell what's going on the models. In the wildcard slot, I wanted to fit in this Chaos Renegade from 1988. This is the earliest available model I could find on here. Seems like this is the first ever edition of the Chaos Space Marine. Essentially, the biggest difference is the power unit on the back there, and how the exhaust vents are way more protruding than they are on regular Space Marines. Here's another one. This is called the Slanesh Renegade. This guy looks pretty crazy. This one's called the Tzeentch Renegade. I'm not sure if it's supposed to look as fleshy as it does, but it's definitely interesting looking. Well, thank you very much for joining me in this model retrospective. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any of these crazy Chaos Space Marine models, or if you're going to want them after watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more content like this, and check out Lexicannon for yourself if you want to see some of these models. Thanks a lot for watching, and take care.